Exploring the possibility of vampires existing is a frequent pastime of many subcultures in many forms. From gaming to literature, a surprising amount of media and research has been dedicated to reifying this myth. Where the vampire was used in place of an understanding of disease theory, modern knowledge of disease can explain how vampires might be created. Since the vampire is supposedly capable of transmitting its condition by way of its bite, or consumption of its blood, we are naturally led to assume that vampirism would take the form of some kind of disease. But what vector might be capable of conveying the vampire's condition? The retrovirus is a unique class of viri, capable of rewriting the DNA of infected cells, and it is frequently called upon to explain how changes might come about in humans and other living things in many works of fiction. Indeed, it is the simplest way of explaining how vampirism might be passed from a vampire to a non-vampire. The retrovirus uses a process known as reverse transcriptase to insert itself into the nucleus of an infected cell. This process is volatile and prone to error, as the inserted genes are not exposed to the usual checking by polymerase to ensure adequate gene encoding. Thus, mutations in the retrovirus abound, making sporadic and seemingly absurd evolutions, such as the subsistence by blood, not too unreasonable. The retrovirus is used in medicine to treat genetic abnormalities and certain cancers. But due to the alteration of genetic information, many people receiving treatment can have future complications, such as further tumor development or a violent autoimmune response as their own immune system fails to recognize their altered cells. This barrier aside, retroviri as a vector for vampirism is the myth's best hope for becoming reality. To further link this to the vampire myth, the vampire retrovirus should be more easily transmitted by sexual and blood contact, similar to HIV, thus reinforcing the sexualized aspect of the modern vampire myth. Though the communicability of vampirism may be explained, other aspects of the myth may not. Indeed, the most critical of all, the drinking of blood for sustenance. In general, blood is not a very nourishing food source, consisting mostly of plasma. Up to 6 liters of blood must be drunk each day to sustain a human-sized creature, without any additional strength or speed and the like. Additionally, these 6 liters have very little nutritional value, which means that massive amounts would need to be consumed every day for a vampire to get adequate amounts of mineral sustenance. Thus, a real vampire would need to feed off whole towns to adequately sustain itself. It is for this very reason that creatures that consume blood as a primary food source are significantly smaller than their prey. Ticks, mosquitoes, and leeches take it one step further by turning their entire bodies into veritable sacs to contain volumes of blood greater than their own body, just to gain an adequate amount of sustenance. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to explain vampirism without requiring the vampire to actually consume other food items in addition to blood. Perhaps we might resolve this issue by making the vampire entirely carnivorous, feasting on the flesh of humans, not just our blood. A weakness to sunlight is a well-known malady afflicting some individuals. Known as porphyria, this disease leaves its victims sensitive to ultraviolet light. Sufferers will usually have a blanched skin due to their propensity for radiation burns. More severe cases of porphyria can even result in discoloration to the teeth and eyes, as well as, strangely enough, the progressive disappearance of the lips, ears, and nose, resulting in a decidedly vampiric appearance. Finally, the immortality of the vampire is an interesting aspect to attempt to make real. The problem with this aspect, though, is that no one body of research can adequately agree on what causes aging. Some theories hold that decay of telomeres at the end of genes causes aging, while others attribute aging to the accumulation of irreparable metabolic and genetic insults within the cells. And some still hold that gradual buildup of irremovable toxins might cause it. Thus, contriving a way in which something might become ageless is very difficult, as we don't truly know what exactly causes aging. Perhaps you can solve this problem in the comments below, dear viewer. Despite this disappointing revelation to the limits of the vampire myth, one thing that will truly remain immortal is our fixation and fascination with this alluring creature.